Hello, thanks so much for being here, and I'm going to show you the timeline in which I wrote the Burntout Story. Like most sequential stories, you often read about the furthest time back to that of in the end of when you catch up. And so I thought, when I was reflecting on a decade memoir here, I asked myself, what were the steps that I should take into putting this together? And as you see here in this timeline, in which part 1 does show 2012, what I decided was, let me recap on life since graduating high school. And that was 9 years after 2012 into 2021. Now, when I thought about this, I said, should I leave the conclusion in which the last part, the most recent part, on the top, and then explain the rest? Or should I share something that technically started further behind and then everything that led up to this moment now? Although I am embracing a 1-year reunion of the Burntout Story being published in 2022, the summer, which thankfully I was able to write this entire thing within a year span, thankfully. But getting started into how I wrote the Burntout Story, well, what I did was I realized going throughout graduate school that there was a lot of my life that I had to address from within. And now that wasn't always easy to address, especially something that you don't always want to admit. As a Leo myself, when understanding pride could be something that not help you down the road at all times, but it still has its purposes. Anyways, what I realized was there was so much life that has already happened before I even graduated high school, yet the way I spent life after graduating high school, to some degree, that led me to a master's degree, and the journey that was everything in between, taught me that the best way for me to go forward in my life was to address my past in some constructive manner. So what I decided to do was write about it, especially with a master's in counselor education, applying towards myself, not just in this moment, but throughout the graduate program, and just re-examining parts of life in which was I my best version at that time, and how could I pass that down onto other generations if this conversation could exist. Because the purpose of having a master's in counselor education is that your conversations aren't to feel as if it's speaking down on somebody. Rather, it's about having that conversation that really promotes communication to exist in the first place. So it's what I realized throughout one of my master's level classes is the notion of when a person gives you an opportunity, that opportunity sometimes is not to be taken for granted, because not every opportunity in our favor is always going to come our way. That's why it's important to be honest about the effort we put towards things. So I applied that to writing the Burntout Story as ultimately the title. By the time 2021 came, I was finished, and I didn't know that I was going to have to do an additional year of internship. And I'm going to leave that part for you to discover in the Burntout Story.